El Libre, who actually did that in or from New Zealand. Can you believe that? And that was a song actually he wrote. Dugay na kuno kayo, teenager pa siya. Ni karon lang niya na record now that he's in New Zealand. In fact, he's been there for the past 20 years. He was a lawyer, a CPA lawyer, a broadcaster in the Philippines, in Cebu, for a long time, for more than half his life. But he said he did everything, he tried everything, but he has decided now to, at least 20 years ago, to migrate to New Zealand. This is a common story that we hear all the time nga ato mga kaigsuunan. In fact, ako ang mga anak sad, ang ilang mga plano is manglarga gyud ni sila. So mo ginay kaning common story nga atong madunggan sa atong mga kaigsuunan. And maybe he can help us, maybe not. But we have here of the former, still is the host of a long-running radio show called Lamdag. Of course, he was whisked away. He was kidnapped out of his show to campaign for a party list called PROMDI. Ladies and gentlemen, my dear friend and everyone's favorite uncle, Mimo Osmeña. Maayong bungkag ni Mida, Mimo.
Maayong buntag kanaton tanan.
How's everything? How are you doing? How's the campaign coming along? Your party list is called PROMDI. Is that correct? Is that the full name of the party list?
Well, that's the acronym that will be placed in the ballot.
Okay.
PROMDI.
What does the acronym stand for?
PROMDI initially was started by my father back in 1998 as a national party. It was it was called the Probinsya Muna Development Initiative, and then they amended it to Progressive Movement for the Devolution of Initiatives.
Okay.
But just to make it short, PROMDI.
Okay. So kanang PROMDI mura naman mura na siya part of our lexicon, di ba? Kanang word nga PROMDI murag part na sa tong lingwahe.
It was derogatory once upon a time.
Correct, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
when you went to Metro Manila and you were from the provinces,
PROMDI man siya.
kana siya from the province, you know.
Yeah.
And when Cebu had its boom in the late 80s, early 90s, we were proud to be PROMDI. So we reversed it. We turned it around. We made it a pride rather than
You made it a good thing.
Made it a
so
good thing.
Although that word was already in our lexicon, it was a derogatory word. So you whisked it away from it being this. You rescued the word and made it into a good word, thanks to your dad, Lito Osmeña, who made that word a good word. Am I correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
So tell us about that. What was Lito Osmeña's vision, Mimo, your dad's vision? What was he looking at? Why was he focusing on the provinces? Of course, he was governor at that time, right? So what was his goal?
Well, if you look at cities all over the world, efficiencies, we were studying efficiencies. If you don't have critical mass, meaning you have a low number of people living in a community, you don't hit what's called critical mass. You don't have an economic acceleration. So you need to hit a minimum of 500,000 people to be able to achieve that critical mass, and then to a maximum of about 2 million. Once you go beyond 2 million, there's another set of problems that happen. And in this country, opportunities were only in the metro areas. At that time, it was Metro Manila. And so all the other provinces, all the other areas in the provinces needed to be uplifted. And doing that, we had to achieve certain basic infrastructure, certain pillars have to be met. And that's why he had his 4 pillars at that time, which was power, transportation, communication, and water. Of course.
When you say critical mass, Mimo ba, what do you mean? What do you mean when you say critical mass? You need a certain number of people in a municipality to succeed.
Not necessarily what municipality, in a community.
In a community.
Yeah. So pananglitan na ako'y mupalit ko chinelas nung bayad ko 100 pesos.
Okay,
Ang kanang
okay.
100 gamito na siya kay ang katong nibaligyas chinilas mupalit og bugas. Nya katong gipalitan og bugas mupalit og sanina. Ang katong so you have this 100 pesos that goes around, which is the velocity of money.
Okay.
So M1 is money supply, but M1 has no value if this paper is under your pillow or in your wallet.
Okay.
But the moment you use it, it has value, and the more times you use it, that's what stimulates the economy. So what happens is, if you only have 10 people, we don't need chinelas every day, so you
Okay.
only buy one time. But if
Okay.
you reach 500,000 people, it reaches a point where everybody's doing something, and so that money flow starts accelerating
Okay.
within that community. Once you exceed 2 million, then you have a different type of critical mass problems, like sobrang ng kadaghang mga sakyanan, sugod ng traffic, your resources are limited, so you run out of water, you end up with so much garbage. I mean, once you exceed that. Now, it doesn't mean one town or one municipality. Like now, Metro Cebu is not just Cebu City. You have the adjacent cities. You have Mandaue, Lapu-Lapu, Talisay, and then up north, Consolacion. So the Metro Cebu has started to grow, and it's beyond the efficiency already. And so when you exceed the efficiency, the problems start to multiply again. So instead of doing that, is you bring more opportunity to the other areas outside of the metro areas. Palambuon na to ang mga munisipyo at mga ubang lugar sa atong probinsya o sa ubang mga probinsya. Then you create opportunities there. People don't move into the metro areas. Right now, why higayon sa ilang mga lugar mo na mamalhin sila Cebu City, increases the population, accelerates our problems.
Okay.
So that was the plan, probinsya muna, which
Okay.
was to devolve, bring authority and budgets outside of the metro areas in order to create this growth and reach critical mass and critical infrastructure.
So the 500,000 population that you mentioned earlier, what does that represent? So is it in ratio to, let's say, the size of the city, the municipality? Is it in relation to the size of the economy, or is it in relation to the number
population,
of jobs?
number of people.
Number of people.
More or less, when you reach 500,000 people living within accessible distances.
Okay.
Accessible. You can't say ang kining isla na 10,000, katong isla 10,000, sa di man na sila makaabot kay maglisod sila unless they have speedboats or whatever. So
Okay.
you need to have in one area. It doesn't have to be one municipality. It could be a combination of several municipalities. Tag 10 minutos lang ang commute or 20 minutos. So it becomes part of an economic community. So more or less, it's the economic community that has to reach that critical mass.
But I noticed now nga daghan kayog mga syudad na karon sa Cebu, sa probinsya sa Cebu, right? Katong gihisgot nimo nga murag ang Karkar syudad naman sana, di ba?
You've got
Danao, di ba? Talisay.
That's right. First district, mas daghan na silang mga syudad. If you look at the third district, it's just Toledo. No, ang Toledo dool sa Balamban, pero wa pa siya kaabot sa critical mass. No, wa pa siya moabot og 500,000.
So dili din a feature of economic contribution dai ang kaning ang usa ka syudad, ang munisipyo mahimo og syudad, dili din populasyon din na
Well,
siya?
it's a combination. It's either you reach a certain economic level or you reach a population. But that's our definition. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Okay.
That's just definition sa atong mga sa atong government. No?
Okay, that's what's in the law, so to speak, right? Kanang definition of
How to call a
place
place a city.
Okay.
But that doesn't matter because what we're looking at is the economic efficiency of an area.
Okay.
And that has to do with hitting the critical mass as far as population is concerned.
Okay.
So that there's, you have the velocity of your currency to be able to trade, barter, sell, buy. There's activity.
So kanang mga syudad nga mga munisipyo nga na change na ilahang status into a city, that is a kind of devolution. But does that mean nga there will be more progress for these component cities of the island of Cebu?
Ngana na
siya.
Ngana na siya. Syudad, munisipyo.
Okay.
Okay, ngana na siya.
But
Ang importante diha ang pagtuyok, paglihok sa ekonomiya, lahi na siya. Now, that's one of the definitions to be called a city. If you achieve certain, so even if you have, maybe a population of 20,000, but you have the economic level, I don't remember the exact amount, then it can be considered a city. But that defeats the point of having this efficiency, critical mass in the efficiency. No, it's not the name or it's not the rules. It's the actual economic activities going on in that one city.
When you say efficiency, Congress, can I call you Congressman? Is that okay?
Not yet.
Okay. Soon to be Congressman Mimo Osmeña ba? When you say efficiencies ba? Efficiency, what do you mean? Give me an example of an efficiency of a community.
Okay. Efficiency relates to how economics is flowing. No, if your population is too small, let's say you open a department store, you don't have enough people to come in and purchase. So you're not likely to be profitable, so people don't want to open a major department store. Kung naka-isari-isari store, why problema? Bisag anang 50 ka tao, malipay na kaana.
Mga silingan mo.
Yung mga silingan. So, una importante ang mga silingan nga. O kuwang imong silingan, lagyo kayo, why dalan, walay kurente, why tubig. Nothing's going to happen. Now, when you reach 500,000, it becomes economic for certain investments. So, nanay mo tokod og electric cooperative or electric power plant, nanay mo tokod og water system. It becomes conducive for people or companies to establish within that community because you have hit a certain number of potential clients. So you can start opening. I mean, look at Cebu. Look at the number of restaurants. If we open Tops, the new Tops, 50 years ago, why mangari? You know, because we don't have the population, we don't have the flow, the economics are not there. You're competing with everybody else in the city. If you're down in Nivel, layo na kay na. I mean, when we started developing Maria Luisa, ingon to sila nga, nabuang Manislito, wa may mo puyo diha kalayo ana kanya maisa naman na siya diha, you know. So
Correct,
you have to have the vision and to be able to see
what other people,
what the potentials
what
are.
other people can't, right? I remember saying the same thing when I was given a tour by Marisa Fernan of SM City Cebu. The first time, this was back in the 90s, right? Kung dakuan yung mall, how do you intend to populate this one with customers, man?
Exactly. So if you have a population of 100,000, it might not survive.
Yeah, but as it turns out, they knew something that I didn't, obviously, because I'm not an economist. So wako kebaw nga napuno ra gyud ang SM City eventually, di ba?
Yeah, now there are certain economic indicators, like if you have studies and saying the per capita income is this much, and so you analyze that as a businessman, all that. But then we look at it more from a visionary point of view. You look at it more as the potentials, and you look at potentials. You have efficiencies. You look at all the countries in Europe that are quite advanced. They're so old. Europe is so much older than America, and you have populations of between 500,000. I think Oslo is 500,000. I mean, these capital cities are 500,000. The maximum is 2 million. Once you go beyond 2 million, then you have the other problems that start coming in. Now that will change. I mean, it's not set in stone as technology changes. I mean, now, for instance, with the advent of the internet, you can work from home. So you don't have to be in a certain location. And now you have online purchasing. You do buying online. So when they started the internet business, I mean, I had one of the first online. It was wholesale. It was called Asian Yellow Pages. It's kind of like Alibaba, but we were too early, so there was not enough people using the internet at that time, so it wasn't viable. So that's what I mean by hitting the critical mass. So any community, it's more or less 500,000. When you hit 500,000, there's enough economic flow in there to stimulate additional growth, acceleration.
Kung naibong mo sa inyong gipamina mga kaigalaan, this is future Congressman Mimo Osmeña of the party list of PROMDI. Kung naamoy mga pangutana, join us on our conversation sa YouTube Tops Media Center. Namin dito karon. You can see us there. You can see me, myself, and Mimo. I'm Jiggy Juice, by the way. You can also text me 0999-887-6070. That's 0999-887-6070. Or you can message us on Messenger at Tops Media Center, or maybe even just comment your questions on our posts, okay? Mimo, Congressman Mimo, give us a clear-cut example. Kay kaning syudad sa Sugbo, murag medyo daghan na kay tagtao, di ba? Mura na tag ni sobra na tag, grabe na kay tagka-traffic. Unsa man imuhang imong plano nga buhaton, unsa may mahitabo kung ma-implement niya successfully na imuhang mga plano for Cebu? For example, give us a clear a manifestation of what you plan to do once you get elected as congressman.
Okay. There are several parts to that. No, it's not a straightforward answer. Number one, the job of a congressman is to create laws,
Yeah.
mangbabalaod, no?
Correct,
Kongresista.
Yeah.
And you want to create certain laws that, as far as PROMDI is concerned, the platform is concerned, that encourages devolution so that people move out towards the province and start developing the provinces.
Okay.
You either create incentives or you create certain, I guess incentives would be, there's so many ways to create certain incentives, economic incentives, ownership incentives, whatever. So people do that. The other one is infrastructure. You need to have the infrastructure in those locations so that people will consider establishing in those locations. And then, of course, you have local government, their cooperation with these industries that are coming in order to stimulate or encourage them to come in. Don't make it too difficult for them to come in. So those can be done through legislation. As far as the infrastructure is concerned, the Congress also has a budget to be able to develop certain infrastructure. And slowly, ang among toyo is eventually mahatag og higayon ang tanang mga tao sa dili sa mga rural, sa metro area ngadto sa mga rural areas aron muhinay-hinay lambo ang tibok naso dili kaysa mga metro areas ra. Ug mahitabo na siya, ang mga tao di na sila mamalhin sa Cebu City kay mangita man sila trabaho dinhi ug nanay trabaho sa ilang lugar. Mas nindot kay wapay traffic, wapay daghang pang tubig. I mean, there's so many advantages to being distributed or spread out rather than focused in one location.
Okay. So the country as it is, I don't want to. This is a very uncreative question, but I'm sure there's a better way to ask this. But what is wrong with how we're running things now? Why is the problem of over concentration of progress only in certain areas, like in cities, like for example sa Manila or sa Cebu City and all of that stuff? What is wrong with the way we are doing things now, if you want to call it that, and how can you help? Like how can you solve that problem when you are elected congressman?
Okay, number one, I cannot solve all the problems.
Of course not.
As we always say, wala ka mudagan pagka Ginoo.
Okay. So,
but basically, we're too centralized.
Okay.
It's the way our system is.
Okay.
Yeah, everything is focused in certain areas, and you can't blame people because you've hit the critical mass, and that's where the opportunity is. Many of the big families now that are Manila-based, big corporations, come from the provinces. You know, like my cousins, the Aboitises, they're from Cebu. They've all moved to Manila because the opportunity is there, right? So that's why we have to create the opportunities outside, and we have to take slow steps. It's not something that can be done very quickly, but you need to start it somewhere. It's not, you have to lead by example. So, you know, we're doing things and they're saying, oh, people will copy you. And I say, good, because I'm not after the glory. I'm after the result, you know, for the next generation and generations to come. It's not something that can be solved within 1 term, 2 terms, or 3 terms. I'm looking at 20 years, 30 years down the line. You know, what's going to happen to Cebu? We're just going to be, you know, saturated Cebu City if we don't spread out to the provinces. And you can see the development in the provinces here too. But what about the other places outside, like in Negros and in Panay, in Bohol, and Mindanao has shown a lot of progress in recent years. So they're starting to move towards critical mass in certain areas, and their growth planning has been done better than in other areas as well. So our population is continuing to grow. We're already 115 the last.
I think
last count, but now we're already at 120 or
120. We're approaching 130 already. I think 130
but
million.
Our growth rate has slowed down. We're not as populous as we used to be.
You mean population?
Growth rate.
Okay.
But you know, what about 50 years from now? I remember when we were in high school, it was only 40 million. So it's less than 1/3, basically. Yeah, 1/3. So what's going to happen 50 years from now? Are we going to be 3 times the population? Are we going to be 300 plus million, 400 million? How are we going to be able to handle that, you know?
In case you're wondering where you can catch us, you can listen to us on 105.1 TMC. That's what you're doing right now in your respective cars. Kung naman yung mga pangutana, i-text lang nako 0999-887-6070 na kami sa YouTube, Tops Media Center. We're also actually on TikTok at Tops Media Center. You're listening to the voice of future Congressman Mimo Osmeña, party list PROMDI. You know what? Naghisgot ka og 10 years, 20 years, 50 years imong vision. But ato man kaigsuunan man gud kaning congressman, kaning mura og ang ilahang panglantaw short term ra kay ang ilang ginahuna kay makakaon ra ko ugma.
Yes.
Kaning ang ilang ginahuna ang akong anak maka-eskwela lang, makainom lang ko og tubig, kanang mga basic necessities ba. How will you be able to sell your idea that requires decades to come into fruition? Unsa may mga short-term goals sa imong vision?
Yeah. So you're talking about strategic planning and tactical.
Yeah.
You know, the strategic planning is your long-term plan. How do we achieve this devolution, which is the platform of our party? So the party is an institution on its own.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I am temporary. You know, eventually, whether I retire or I die, you know, I'm out of the picture and it's the next. So we need to maintain, you know, a clear platform, a clear direction for the party.
Okay.
And since we're a national party, we also have LGU candidates running under the party. And so they have to understand what the thrust of PROMDI is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as tactical is concerned, I mentioned earlier that we had 4 pillars, which is you have to generate power, supply water, transportation, which is the roads, and whether it's shipping, airports, seaports, and of course, you have communication. And nowadays, it's internet, Wi-Fi. I mean, for example, I was talking to a service provider once upon a time. They wanted to give free Wi-Fi. They were just having difficulty getting the permits with the LGUs. And that's why I didn't push through. But they can, it's kind of like YouTube. YouTube is free, but there are advertisements. So you could have free Wi-Fi, but there would be advertisements. And you could provide that service nationwide. Then with the Wi-Fi communication, everybody can communicate anywhere in the world. And during my, during my visitation of all the other areas in the Philippines, including Cebu City, there's one more pillar that has been missing. And even when investors come in, they always ask about that, which is healthcare. Where's the nearest hospital? Where's the nearest facilities? What's available? Mo na mga problema ron sa kadaghanan sa mga tao, ang mga seniors, you know, ang ilang maintenance, ang ilang pagtambal, ang ilang you know, hospital. Right now, if anything happens to you and me, we have to go down all the way to the city. And I think you didn't know that there's a hospital right behind us. It's just not operational. It's brand new. So why is that? So these are tactics that have to be done by the LGU. I mean, as a legislator, technically, that's not your job. But then you do get certain funding to be able to put into certain projects such as that to provide what the immediate need is. Now, the other thing that we believed in, that we tested back in late 80s and early 90s, was giving the budget directly to the barangay. Kaya kinsa may magatubang sa mga tao kada adlaw, kinsa may ilan doolon, di man sila mo dool adto sa Metro Manila, di sila moari sa Cebu City, kalayo for them, for here sa Bukid, layo kay syudad, mahal kay plete, you know, so mudool sila sa ilang konseho, sa konsehal sa barangay.
Barangay council.
That's right. So, but the barangay agad gyapon sila sa city government, or in the case of the province, the provincial government, or the national government, because many of the services that are given are through the national office. So that system stems back from the colonial system, which is we were centralized because we were paying homage to the king in Spain, right? And so all the taxes were sent to Metro Manila, and then from there, at that time it was Manila, it was the capital, and it was sent to Spain. So we have to learn to devolve and start increasing the budgets and the authority of the local government without requiring approvals from the central office. Now, not all the barangays will succeed. They say, there will be some barangay captains who are not efficient or who don't know how to properly manage their barangay. Well, that's when the people will choose. We should have barangay elections regularly. Right now, it's still uncertain. And whereas they're the most important, the barangay level is the most important because that's the day-to-day. I mean, you have the national government who they come up with programs and they send certain projects to the barangays, and the barangay says, we don't need that. I mean, what we need here is something else. And, that's why you have to give credit to the barangay because they know exactly what they want or what they need. Yeah, better than somebody who lives, 300 miles away.
Sakto ka, future Congressman Mimo Osmeña, nga kinanglan nga ato ang funds ma-devolve, pero one of the biggest issues mga we have as a people is kanang corruption, di ba? So what happens if we throw all of our funds in the barangays? Will that be more susceptible to corruption?
Okay. Corruption is there. Nobody's denying that. But the difference is, if somebody's corrupt from the central government, there's nothing people can do about it. They don't see them every day. Barangay official, you see every day. So people can interact with them.
Manuktok sila sa bahay sa barangay captain.
In fact, what I was saying, some of my friends saying, dili na ipatuman ni Mimo, batohon na tong ilang balay kay dool ra.
Sakto gyud. So mona ang nakanindot kung nasa barangay captain, nasa barangay councilor ang funds kay pwede ra kung naay mangay corruption, na mangay something fishy, pwede ra manuktok.
Makita sa mga tao.
Manuktok ra ang mga tao. Yeah,
well, gisuway naman na sa akong amahan. Ang iyang gibuhat, ang budget niya sa una, gihatag niya diretso sa barangay. Ang nahitabo ni Saka ang efficiency 200%.
Okay.
Kay kanang pananglitan, mohatag sila simento para sa daan. Bantayan sa mga tao kay ilan ang daan sa ilang at sa autobangan sa ilang mga balay.
Correct. Oh.
So sometimes the efficiency, now some will fail, but more will succeed because the underlying problem, one of the underlying problems is corruption, but the main problem we have is lack of execution.
Okay.
Because even as a business person, if you build a factory and your factory will be your source of revenue eventually, if somebody says, okay, if you pay me 10% more, 20% more, I can finish the construction time in 50%. I'll finish it in half the time. Many businessmen will look at the numbers and say, well, my money will start flowing after half the time, then I'm willing to pay extra in order to be able to achieve that. So it's getting things done. The problem is things slow down or don't get done at all. You should have like one-stop shops. I mean, getting a business permit here takes forever. So much requirements. Every time you submit it, napay kuwang, napay, So it's not clear. There's no one-stop shop. There used to be. I think Lapu-Lapu has one-stop shop. So it's very efficient. Those are things to help businesses set up. Now you have the big businesses and they have personnel to handle that. Pero kanang mga gagmay, kanang mga micro, mga bagong ganahan sila mom and pop, ganahan sila magtukod sa ilang kaugalingong negosyo. We have to make it easier for them. We have to help them. That can be done through legislation. But it's really, legislation is just the law, the rules. But the implementation is the LGU.
So nga naman na siya, kay kaning problema sa red tape, gitawag na to, di ba?
Red tape.
Dugay na yung kinisa ng problema na
you know the story of red tape.
You mean the history, the etymology of the term?
Yeah.
Why is it called red tape?
Okay. Kaniadto mo sa Europe, sa UK, monarchy man na sila, no? So daghan sila mga minister. So kinahanglan nga doon na kay approval sa tanan. Ya kato sila ang ilang buhaton butangan to nila ribbon nga poa, nga wax, nga ang ilang singsing mo ilang i-press ato.
Singsing.
Oh, singsing. So murag stamp. Murag siya stamp.
Murag na logo dito.
Logo ang ilang blazon or whatever that is, no? And hantod nga og tungod kadaghan mapuno na to siya ribbon ang tibok papel nanay daghan na po kabuk or 20 kabuk nga approval mo na it's full of red tape. Kinahanglan daghan kag agion nga hantod nga ma-approve siya.
Mo din ang etymology ng word aday. Kanang
tape.
problema dugay na kani panahon pa ni sa katong
500 years
ago nya murag tan-aw na ko dili man gyud masulbad ni. I think naam siguro tay mga enough laws for it ba? Or kuwang ra ato mga balaod? Or ato mga tao incompetent lang to interpret the law? Sa may problema gyud nato ani
Maybe bali.
Okay.
Sobra kadaghan ang mga balaod. That's why there's a committee in Congress that reviews the existing laws to start removing those that are no longer effective or no longer what's the word, appropriate.
Okay.
Because that's one of the first things my dad was complaining about when he sat as governor. It's like in order to get anything approved, you needed something like 120 signatures. Mo na kadaghan siyang red
Correct.
tape.
Yeah.
And then he was able to legally cut it down to 26 or 27.
Okay.
But still 27 approvals.
That's still a lot of signatures.
And the more they centralize it, it's like now, okay, so it goes from the provincial to the regional, then from the regional mo atus national, nya kinahanglan ma-approve pas national, nya mo balik na sad. Hinay kayo ang dagan, no? Whereas if dunay gahom ang LGU, I mean, there are certain things nga pwede barangay lang, di na kinahanglan mo ato dito sa taas, mas dali.
Nakinumdum ko sa ako ang pagka-high school, pagka-college na ko sa UP nga kinanglan daghang kay pirmahan ang imuhang naipapilis nga papirmahan before ka makagraduate.
Yes.
Ni akong anak nagbagot-but sa ni bago lang to siya sa Cebu Dokpon nga daghan po kay pirmahan before ka makagraduate. So kanang red tape, it has to be it's there for a reason, right?
It's there.
Para unsa mo gid ang mga pirma-pirma nganong daghan man kay pirma kinanglan niya.
Well, two things. One is ganahan gyud ang tao na doon na sila gahom. So kinahanglan i-appeal ko. I knew ko kalimti, no?
Okay.
I-appeal ko.
Okay.
That's one reason. Second is wa sila salig sa mga tao. Kinahanglan mo agi gyud nako, makita gyud nako, basahon gyud nako.
Okay.
If you look at an efficient corporation and then they say as companies grow, it becomes very bureaucratic, which is the red tape.
Okay.
No? Kaya ma-approve pa ni sa imong supervisor, niya gikan supervisor, approve pa ni sa manager, niya approve sa manager, mo saka na sa dito sa head office, antod ang presidente mismo mo pirma. That's very inefficient. That's called micromanaging.
Correct, yeah.
You know, it shouldn't be that way. You have to set it up that you have to trust your people and you just put your checks and balance. Pero mo na ilang checks and balance nga antes nga mugawas, antes mahitabo, kinahanglan basahon yun nila.
Correct.
No? Di na masilbi kay one person cannot run every detail.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why our government is set up the way it is. It should be like a pyramid. The base is the biggest and the most important, which is your barangay.
Okay.
Everything happens on the barangay level. Kung dili na kaya sa barangay, diha na siya musaka sa munisipyo or sa syudad.
Okay.
Unya og dili na gyud kaya sa munisipyo ug syudad, diha na mo appeal ang province. Unya og dili na gyud kaya sa province, diha na mo saka sa national government. That's why you have national defense kana national government, pero kanang barangay ang mga daan nila, ang ilang water system, when you're talking about small communities, they should have a free hand there. Cebu City, we have MCWD, and our good friend now is the chairman of MC, si Mike, di ba? But I'm going around here and Cebu City, the urban center, which is downtown, they have the infrastructure in place, but musaka kas mga bukid, wa sila tubig. So problema na gyapon ang tubig nila. Those things have to be addressed. Now, say why budget? Barangay, why budget? Ang LGU, ang ilang focus is to fix the problems of the biggest section of the population, which is downtown. So mabili na hinuon ang mga outskirts. That's day-to-day. That's Band-Aid approach. That's not long-term planning. Long-term planning, we need to devolve. We need to push outwards. We have no choice. As our population grows, it's either you reclaim land, nga pwedeng mahala, or manaka sila sa bukid. Or the best really is to start developing other areas. That's why Dad built the Trans-Central Highway. Iyan ang gitukuran aron dali na mo abot ang Balamban. So Nishi set up there and it started to develop. That's the type of infrastructure that from a provincial level you should implement in order to be able to give more opportunities for growth in the outside areas so that you don't congest. So in the long term, the problems of Cebu will be slowly solved because more people will move towards the outskirts since there are more opportunities there.
Ipasigdahan mo si imong amahan nga si Governor Lito Osmeña, dugay-dugay ni back in the 80s pa ni siya ba? unya kaning murag siguro wala siguro ni follow up niya ni paghuman sa iyang pagka-governor one term naman
One
to siya.
term. That's
So
correct.
wala gid ni follow up siguro niya iyang mga proyekto.
Well, I'll give you another example. All flights, I don't know, kay no mo larga kag international kinahanglan mo agi ka sa NAIA.
Okay.
O sarag yun ang atong international. Gikan ka Cebu, dili ka makalarga sa abroad mo adto pagyukas Manila.
Okay.
So they wanted to control it. Yeah, iyang giaway dito hantod na hatagan tag Mactan Cebu International Airport became an independent agency running its international flights. And I can say today that we're very proud of our international airport.
Yeah.
No? Then you have the Cebu Port Authority, which is also independent. And then they try to nationalize it again and to control it again. Rather than devolve it, everybody wants to keep control over it. So they should devolve. They have many reasons. There's so many arguments. But bottom line, if you look at it from the big picture, you need that.
So, kaning imuhang mga projects imong amahan nga si Governor Lito Osmeña, napasigdaan niya when he was governor, wala gid siya na continue siguro. That's why we're back to the same problem. Akong pangutana ani Mimo ba is this, kinsa may maligsan ani? I know makabenepisyo ni sa kinabag-an, di ba? Kay devolution manggali. So atong mga probinsya mo lambo na. Ang progress mo katag na sa tibuok naso, dili na isolated in one, concentrated in one place. Pero kinsa may dili ganahan ni ani tan-aw nimo? Who will this
I'm sure people who like the authority controlling over one area. So they, if your population reduces, your economic level might reduce, but you have to. It's not about people wanting it to happen. It's about executing it. That's difficult. It's coming up with proper legislation and having the LGUs understand how to implement it, having the background, the knowledge to be able to implement the tactical details that are needed in order for the community to start accelerating.
I hear this a lot, and how does it apply to your advocacy sa PROMDI? Nga daghan na kay tag mga nindot nga balao diri sa Pilipinas, ang problema lang implementasyon. So
Lack of execution.
lack of execution. Ang akong pangutana siguro ni ani is kuwang bata og kaning implementasyon sa mga balaod nato nganong wala na devolve ato ang funds, or we really need new legislation for what you want to happen?
Well, you have to review the legislation and you look at how what the guidelines are inside that legislation, because there are certain conditions and I guess it's guidelines really. What the rules are, how do you implement it, what the consequences are if these laws are not followed.
Okay.
And so maybe it just needs to be retrenched. Doesn't have to be removed or changed. You just need to adjust it a little bit.
Sa Amerika karon nagitawag nila Department of Government Efficiency,
Yes,
or DOGE.
yeah.
I know it's a very controversial thing, but I'm curious ba, like, do we have a similar office, and do we need a kind of DOGE in the Philippines?
It sounds interesting. I mean, I like it. My initial reaction to that was, yeah, that's a good idea, but is it implementable? You can give recommendations. We have something, you could say a little bit NEDA, National Economic Development, where they do studies and they tell you how the efficiencies are and what's going on and all. You can get a lot of information there, but there's nobody really looking at details of efficiency specifically. And then you have interagency, because all the different agencies are interconnected. You've got Department of Science and Technology. They come up with all the new ideas, but it's how to implement it. Like many years ago, they knew that the computer was the up-and-coming thing, but it's how to convince the other agencies. So it becomes the president, really, who takes the lead and say, okay, this is what we have to do. So I want this agency and this agency to work together to solve this problem. I want this solved within the next 6 months.
Okay.
And then they would execute. That's their priority. In fact, during the time of President Ramos, he created he was going to create a super secretary, one secretary who was above 4 secretaries underneath, that would coordinate the activities like Department of Transportation, Communication, DPWH, that sort of thing, and then coordinate everything through that one secretary, and get a united front as far as solving infrastructure problems are concerned.
So you are for a kind of Doge because if we don't have it yet,
Well,
is it something that's implementable, like you said, in the Philippines?
I think again it falls back to the leadership.
Okay.
Okay, it's up to the leadership because the people underneath will follow what the leader says. So the leader has to have the vision to be able to say, okay, this is the direction we need to go. So these agencies have to coordinate. Now, he can create a Doge, but the Doge could be consultant, doesn't have to be a department. You can bring in economists, you can bring in technical experts, get their advice. I mean, that's what committees are for. You know, committees in Congress where they sit down, they discuss, then they invite the different government agencies and they look at what's happening. And then you question them, what's going on? Why can't you do this? What's the problem? Oh, because DNR won't let us do it. So you bring in DNR and say, why can't you do that? And, you know, go back and forth. I'll give you an example. Like DNR said, everything that's behind the tops is watershed. And yet the people there can't get water because they have difficulty getting permits from DNR.
Wow, okay.
But doesn't that defeat the point of, if it's watershed, why can't we have water?
Exactly. Okay.
And then maybe...
Makakita po ko mga truck nga magdala tubig diha.
Yeah. Pila ang metro kwadrado sa tubig ug imo nang i-track din ista sa 500.
So that's actually that's just right under our noses,
yeah, and
right?
that's those are details, right? So maybe as an individual you can focus in one area and solve details, band-aid approach, and then you look at it unsa gyud hinungdan sa problema, unya ug masolba nato ang hinungdan mawa ang problema. It's like traffic is because sobra na kadagan ang mga sakyanan, dili kay auto, bus, motorcycle ang problema, ang hinungdan ang problema, sobra kadaghang tao niya, kinahanglan silang transport system. So they're saying mass transport is the solution, and there are many options for mass transport. That's a band-aid. The best is you create opportunity outside, mamalhin ang mga tao sa ubang mga lugar. You know, you move the head office, like there's a plan to move the capital to Balamban. If they move the capital to Balamban, all the government agencies will move to Balamban. You'll get a percentage of Cebu moving out of Cebu City. You might create critical mass in Balamban, and Balamban will explode as far as economic growth is concerned. And traffic will be reduced. It's just like when there's an activity, a sports event on TV, may traffic, di ba? Or holiday, because people don't go out.
So kaning devolution ba, imuhang advocate for your party list PROMDI, what is its economic impact? Unsa man siya kaning mukatag lang ang wealth pero by and large GDP will be the same, or will this also improve our economy?
If you create opportunity outside, it solves the problems of the metro area.
Okay.
Right? So when we start creating opportunities, and if you put in the proper infrastructure, you will be able to achieve critical mass and then an acceleration of the economics, acceleration of the economy. And that benefits everybody. Kay og daghan ng mga negosyo, mangita silang trabahante, they will start competing. It's supply and demand.
Okay.
Right? So imbes nga, wa may ni-apply, sir, kay pila may sweldo nga atong gi-offer, minimum wage, o sige, pasak ah. Not minimum wage, they increase the wages because there's competition for workers. That's why, if umutrabaho ka sa call center, dako ang ilang sweldo, dili siya minimum wage, kay kuwang ang supply. So if you create opportunities, then you will have a natural increase of salaries, not minimum wage, because minimum wage doesn't really help the worker. Ang pasako nimong sweldo, mapugsa ni Mugsaka ang sweldo, pinaagi sa minimum wage nga balaod. Ang buhaton sa mga negosyante, patasan sa nila presyo sa ilang mga butang. So, mumahal na gyapon. So, magsige lang ka gukod. So, the best on, wa kay trabaho, zero ang imong minimum wage. So, the best solution is to have it happen naturally by creating opportunities, encouraging economic businesses to set up, and the salaries will naturally increase by itself.
Akong gihunahuna kaning congressman, for example, kanang eskwelahan, right? Natay eskwelahan ding daghan kay sa Cebu, kay kadaghanan sa atong mga kaigsuonan sa probinsya, even sa mga neighboring islands, diri man mapa-eskwela nila, di ba? Nya kung butangan nimo eskwelahan dito sa layo, let's just say sa probinsya, dili na sa kinahanglan mo ari diri. So ang eskwelahan nato dili na kayo mapuno. So alkansi na nun sila. So mura rag na spread out ang imuhang economic growth pero naalkansi po rin dito ni puno po dito.
Not necessarily, because one is, if you set up an economic center outside, which there are many, there are schools now in Bantayan, there are schools, outside of Metro Cebu.
In Balamban, yeah.
Yeah. And so people, di na sila kinanlan mubalhin sa Cebu, dako kay naggasto. So
Correct. So that's economic contribution to the city, di ba? Kanang gasto nila diri sa Cebu.
Gasto na pag-anhi sa Cebu.
Correct, yeah.
So you save all that by staying in the province. So their cost is less. So you'll have more qualified employees. When you have more qualified employees, more businesses can hire qualified employees. You can have industries now that can open, whereas once upon a time, there weren't any qualified employees. Why do we have a lot of call centers? Because we have certain value propositions in our education system, in our language. No, ang kanang maayo mo sultig in English, English, maka-appeal na sila dihan. Pero kuwang na sila mo nang taas kay ilang sweldo. So if you create, you move education centers, yes, it will affect Cebu City if more people will go out, but it also benefits us because our traffic will become less.
Okay.
But Cebu the city will always have its charm, and it will always have its own natural economic vibrancy because we are at critical mass.
Yeah. Of course, the Philippines is a relatively new society, new democracy compared to the other countries, right? Okay, is there like a shining example for us nga atong ma-pattern ng ato ang devolution from the cities to the provinces, Congressman?
There is no one example because everything is dynamic. Magsige mag-usab, magsige ilis dili kay tanan parehas. No?
Okay.
You cannot use Singapore as an example kay gamay kay ng islaha.
Correct, yeah.
No? So dili na siya magamit. Japan could be as one example, but lahi ilang culture, lahi ilang education system.
Okay.
Europe is old. And so they've established and they've realized what the efficiencies are. That's why they don't really want to grow their cities.
Okay.
America is relatively new compared to Europe. They have their pluses and minuses. Australia also pluses and minuses. Everywhere you go in the world, nagi plus and minus.
Okay.
No?
But who can we look up to, kind? Who can you say? Who can you point? Tanaw ra gud ang kuano.
Ang pinakaduol din sa ato tanaw na tong kanang mga nasod na sama sa Korea.
Okay.
Where were they in 1950s?
Okay.
Diba?
You're talking about South Korea, right?
South Korea,
okay.
yeah. You look at Vietnam. So they were supposed to be communist, but
Correct.
then look at their growth.
Okay.
But they're already hitting critical kanang sobra na sa kadako, no? So
Okay.
ang mga problema nagsugod na sa dito. Thailand, we were all at par. We were ahead of them. Yan nabilin ta.
So these are examples of
examples. It's dili kay osara. No? You cannot say
of devolution.
You can't say yes. Yeah, examples of devolution. I think Japan is a clear example
Yeah,
of
correct,
devolution. They opened cities all over the place. You
Yeah.
have critical mass, and then because they have the right transportation system,
Okay.
kuwang din eh. Dito sa Japan, makasuroy ka bisagasa sa kailang ka train. No?
Correct. Yeah.
So
Usa siguro na sa mga pinakadako nga drivers sa devolution sa kanang transportation system, di ba?
well, that's why the 4 pillars:
Yeah.
power, water, kay mo man ay kinahanglan sa mga negosyo,
Oh.
and then transportation aron makalihok ang mga butang, ang mga serbisyo, and of course communication. No, since all of that is more or less available, we need to improve it, improve the roads. If we had a highway, for instance, which was the plan before during my dad's time to build a highway from Santander to Daan Bantayan. He did the Trans Central Highway. He wanted to do a transaxial highway. So imbis nga moagi pa ka sa Cebu City, mulabang na lang ka Stunga, gikan Stunga highway na padong sa north ug south, pila na lang usa na lang ka oras. No? That would have stimulated more growth and accelerated the velocity of money.
Ikadaog nimo Congressman Mimo Osmeña as Congressman for PROMDI party list ba? Unsa man imo ang unang buhaton? Before you answer that question, mga kaibigan, kung namoy mga pangutana, just go to our YouTube channel, Tops Media Center. Kung namoy mga pangutana ni Mimo, namoy pangutana about PROMDI, namoy pangutana about yung giingon yung devolution, let us know on TikTok, Tops Media Center. You can also give a message on our Facebook page, Tops Media Center, or text us 0999-887-6070. Unsa may unang buhaton ni Congressman Mimo Osmeña?
Just like the economy, or just like economics, there's no one item. It's like a series of different things.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to be really technical, the first thing I have to do is go to Congress, go to Manila.
Okay, of course. Unsa imong buhaton? Maybe I'll revise the question. Unsa imong first nga balaod nga i-craft? Unsa nga klase nga balaod?
Okay, the first thing I wanted to do is review, because there are existing laws that
Okay.
haven't been implemented. Like the Mandana's law, it's slowly being implemented, but that's really critical because that's part of devolution.
Okay.
And then if you're talking about there are two parts of the congressman in the Philippines. No, lahi ni siya sa ubang mga nasod nga dito bang balaod lang mga projects din. I think the first project that I would look into is that hospital here that's not operating. Why isn't it operating? It will solve so many problems for the mountain barangays. No? Water is another problem that we have to look into. There's just so much. Like you're saying, there's so many details, and it can't be done all at once. So you need to take it step by step. First, you need to do an assessment. So the first thing I'll do is assess what's existing, what's happened to it as far as laws are concerned, and why haven't they been implemented? How would you resolve that? Maybe fix that first before you move on to the next.
You know, what you're trying to do, Congressman Mimo Osmeña, is very complicated. It is a long-term plan. Nothing will be able to, you won't be able to feel what it is that you want to do in the short term, although there might be a few things that you can probably let them feel in the short term. Ang pangutana diri, Congressman, is unsa man imong isulti sa mga katawhan pangampanya nimo ba nga imuhang proyekto, imong vision is quite a long vision. Unsa man imong isulti kung magigstorya kasi imong mga potential voters sa probinsya, sa different islands of the Philippines. Unsa may imong isulti? How do you tell them about your idea?
Unsa imong gisulti? Because we're pretty much done with the campaign already.
Yeah, okay.
First of all, you explain the evolution.
Okay.
About barangay, giving the authority and the budget directly to the barangays as much as possible.
Okay.
Because sila ay nagatubang sa mga tao.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sila mismo, mga tao mismo, mo'y magsabot sa ilang barangay officials nga unsa ilang kinahanglan.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you focus the efforts. Now, if we see it's a nationwide problem, then you create legislation in order to support that. And that's where you start. Mangonsulta gyud ka sa mga tao. That's why I personally have been going around and meeting with the people and talking to them, the different sectors in the provinces. I haven't gone to Metro Manila. It's just outside. Focused here, Visayas, Mindanao. Now, the party list has 10 nominees, and you can elect up to 3 of them. So the others are in Luzon. So they're also going around and finding out what the issues there are. You cannot achieve this alone. So you need to have people who have same mind thinking, same thinking, that believe that the country needs to move in another direction and look at it from a long-term point of view, the same vision. So you need to sit down, bring in a group of experts to get involved in doing proper planning. And then from the planning, then you look at the tactical. How do we execute this?
So pag suroy-suroy nimo sa Pilipinas, Congressman, unsa may imong nakitaan? Unsa imong mga nadunggan sa imong consultation nga ingon nimo?
Well, the majority of the lower income population ilang yun unsay matabang nila, rather than they don't understand the economics. If you say we do infrastructure projects in order to encourage or create opportunities, they don't look at that. They don't look at even the short term. They want the super short term.
Exactly, yeah.
What's in it for me? How do I solve my health problems? Those can be addressed. I mean, you're talking about tactical, like I guess you could create legislation that health we should focus on preventive medicine rather than curative medicine. About teaching them. I go around everywhere you go. It's always the same 2 problems that people have. The biggest problem is high blood pressure and diabetes, and that's our diet.
Yeah.
Can't get away.
Lechon o kanon.
No, soft drinks.
Soft drinks. Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so funny. It's
like, ang rice
contribute. Rice is part of it.
Carbohydrates and sugar.
But if you drink a Coca-Cola, your sugar will spike.
Yeah.
You eat rice, it will climb, but it won't spike.
Grabe gyud po na yung consumption di ay sa kaning
everything, sugar, snacks.
Sa Pilipinas?
Usahay kanang membro man ko din sa among seniors din sa Malubog.
Correct, yeah.
So niadto ko sa among monthly meeting.
Mm.
Nya dunay nihatag og snacks. We're not campaigning, ha. I'm a
Okay.
member. So when the barangay captain gave me the mic, sir, you have a message. I said, no, dili ko mamulitika kay membro ko dinhi. Maminaw lang ko. They gave them snacks, soft drinks and cupcakes and tamis tanan. I said, kinsa may diabetic din pating dagana na niya. Sige na sad mo kaon ana niya. Inom mo samot ang inyong problema. It's understanding, which can be done through having nutritionists involved. So
kanang nutritionist, kanang mga economist ba? These are the experts of their field, di ba?
that's right.
Unya, daghang kayo mga tao, especially now with the advent of social media, in the age of the internet nga,
YouTube University.
nga, daghang kayo mga tao nga dili na mo tuo og experts. So I guess this is a totally different topic, but I want to talk to you about this because this is an important topic. For you, Congressman Mimo Osmeña ba, unsa may role sa experts in nation building? How important are these experts? Nganong maminaw man te ni ani nila?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, experts give you information.
Okay.
And the information is based on certain support.
Okay.
Whether it's something they learned, something they studied, there was an experiment or something. You still have to make a judgment based on the information you get. So I don't listen to all the experts. I have to judge it as well and make my decision and give my opinion.
Pero ang atong mga kinabag-an mga kaigsuonan nato ba, especially now nga mura og dili na kay sila mo salig og mga experts, di na sila mo salig.
Daghang fake.
Daghang fake.
So, daghang fake news, daghang fake information.
And so on and so forth. So ang role sa experts mura og di na kay mutuo ang mga tao nila, di ba? So do you still insist nga kung namanggay kay paminawon about a certain thing, let's just say if it's a medical question, ang expert niya na niya kay doktor gyud. Kung ekonomiya ay mong hisgutan, then ang expert na niya economist gyud.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessary. Because like before the traditional doctor, those who go through medical school and all that, they have a certain opinion based on the technology we have today.
Okay.
Once upon a time, they looked down on traditional medicine, Eastern medicine.
Yeah.
And yet, after many, many years, and they studied the traditional medicine, like herbalists, that herbs do have benefits to it. So now they combine both. So then you have a standard practitioner who has facts behind it and studies behind it showing that these herbs, and they use many of these herbs to make medication. You know, they discovered that. So so it's not as simple as saying, even the experts say, well, your problem with cholesterol is because of your diet.
Okay.
Sige kakaon og lechon. And then they found out, and they used my family as one of the studies because my mother's line, taas kay cholesterol.
Okay.
It's genetic.
Okay.
My mom's cholesterol was 500. My sister, who's a medical doctor, was 350. My brother was, and mine is 180.
Okay.
Why? I eat the same things. When we were growing up, we eat the same thing in the table every day. It's genetics. I got it from a different line of the family. So,
line na po ng field of science.
it
Baka ng
started
genetics, diba?
changing. Yeah. We're talking about 80s, early 80s, 70s.
Wala
when
pa
we were
tong
talking about
genetics.
and they used to say, don't eat eggs, okay, it's not good for you. And then they said eggs are okay. And then after that, they're saying, bacon is bad.
So correct, because of all of the advancements in technology and discoveries and all of that, ang atong
Our
information,
understanding
changes all the time. Fluid pa siya.
Fluid.
But that is the nature of science. It is a self-correcting discipline nga pirmi gyud masayop kay napa may better science ikaugma, di ba? So but unsahong pagsubay ana sa atong mga kaigsuonan nga mag-usab-usab man na siya kinsa may ilang tuuhan. Niya paguman dili mas la pareha nimo nga kaning bright kay tanan nga maka-discern og maka-process og information. Kung makakita sila sa katawo naghisgot ngay nani mo ni ka matuoran. Wanay lain mo ni ka matuoran motuog sila ni ana, di ba?
That's right. And that's something that has to be taught to them, to question everything. When I saw something on the internet says, the real problem with diabetes is there's this bacteria that goes into your body and that's the main cause of diabetes. So I researched. I don't take it as a fact, and they're trying to convince you by taking this type of medicine that will solve all your diabetes problems.
Correct.
And I start to research it because it doesn't make sense. The logic behind the science behind diabetes has nothing to do with this particular bacteria, but then they're saying this bacteria prevents your body from producing insulin. And so I researched it and I found out it was fake.
So mo lagi, so we're hoping everybody will have the same critical thinking, which is a very important thing to do, especially now nga imuha nang gi-devolve ang progress, di ba?
Yeah.
So daghan na kaayog mga progress nga adto nimo sa ibalhin nimo sa probinsya, for example. Unya, what if dili ready ang ilang educational system? Dako sa kining.
Well, maybe that's the problem that we have to address first,
Okay.
is education.
Okay.
Right, which I think is a serious issue in the Philippines, our
Absolutely.
education system. And they're saying that, we have, doon na yung mga bata nga grade 5 nga dili ka mo basa.
Mhm.
Their excuse is kuwang ang ilang nutrition.
Okay. Kuha kaon.
Kuwang sa nutrition, dili kaon.
Oh.
Saktong pagkaon.
Okay. Kuha ang
Yeah.
ilang nutrition, dili bati ilang gipangaon.
Oh,
Mga
bati
junk
ang-
food, ana.
Who knows what it is. But
Okay.
because of that, they don't have the cognitive ability anymore to learn proper reading.
Okay.
And that's why we have to review the education system and find out what is the real problem.
Okay.
And you want to be equitable with everybody. Some students are brighter than others. In some countries, they had the ability to be able to accelerate faster. I mean, I know a lot of students where you sit in class. I was bored in a lot of classes that I was in. And my professor saw that. So he says, you don't have to come to class. You can do your own research. Here's the topic and ikaw na bahala. But I didn't learn anything except my own research.
Okay.
So that was a mistake.
Okay. So mo lagi, so unsa man imuhang planong buhaton in terms of legislation sa atong education with the advent of what you're planning to do, which is devolution?
Again, it's one at a time. No, I
Okay.
cannot solve everything.
You didn't
So-
you didn't apply to be God?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
I have ideas about everything.
Okay.
Nako itubag, but then pilion na nako unsay unahon ako.
Yeah.
Unahon ako ang devolution. Okay.
Okay.
Is give the authority and budget back to the barangay level.
Okay.
Okay, because that solves their immediate problems. Some barangays will shine. Some people have different abilities or better abilities than others, and so they will grow, they will shine, and they will have the opportunity.
Just like what your dad did, Governor Lito Osmeña, nga gihatag niya ang power sa barangay. Don't you think there's like a menudo retail version of this? Don't you want once you sit there as congressman, ang naakay murag experimental area first? Don't you want to do that, or do you want to apply this all throughout the nation immediately?
Well, it's possible that you can do certain areas. I mean, you focus in certain areas.
Okay.
And the easiest, of course, your neighborhood. You start there. You start in your neighborhood. So you help your local barangays where you reside.
Yeah. Okay.
As congressman, you'll be spending majority of your week in Congress.
Okay.
At the same time, you come home and then you meet with them. You do pulong-pulong. So, unsa may mga issue din, unsa may problema din, unsay hinungdan sa mga issue o problema, unsay solution nga pwede nato buhaton, and find out whether it's a budget thing, it's a infrastructure thing, or it's a health thing, and then you find the solution. Like one thing, I go around, I ask people, you have a crowd of, let's say, 50 people. Na by nurse din hi, wala. Na doctor din hi, wala. Na medic first aid lang,
Okay.
wala. So I said, ug dunay ma-heart attack ron kinsa makatabang. Wala, so patay. Or asang pinakaduol nga hospital.
Okay.
Dunay ambulansya. I mean, little things like that. None. It's so easy for us to maybe have the Department of Health do a training to go around different barangays to train those who are interested to become medic first aids. That's
Okay.
first respond.
Okay.
If you want to be a master scuba diver, you have to go through the course of medic first aid. That's just like a 1-2 day course where you learn how to do CPR, mouth to mouth. In other words, somebody has a heart attack, you can act while waiting for the ambulance or the doctor to come and save the life of that person.
Mga kagsunan, kung nahibong mo kin sa inyong ipaminaw, this is future Congressman Mimo Osmeña of PROMDI, live here in 105.1 TMC, live on TikTok at Tops Media Center, on YouTube, Tops Media Center, 0999-887-6070. Mo ka na ito ang text number or messenger at Tops Media Center. Karong ato ang mga barangay as presently constituted ba? Unsa man ilahang budget niya? Nanin sila budget gikan sa national government. Unsa man siya like, tell us about what the barangay as it is now. What is it enjoying? What kind of funds do they have, if ever there are any?
There's what they used to call the era. They call it something else. There's a percentage of the budget of the city that goes to them, and including like property taxes, like the development of the tops now. A percentage of the property tax that we pay goes to the barangay, and the city also determines. The mayor determines, what shares the barangay gets.
Okay.
So there are some barangays in the Philippines that have a budget of billions.
Oh, wow.
Per year.
Okay.
Yeah. Makati,
okay.
barangays in Makati.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have huge budgets, and there's some barangays that don't have much.
Okay.
Right. So
for example, I'll give you ask you for an example. Let's just say the barangay of Guadalupe, for example. Pila ka na. How about
I
here?
don't know.
Do you have any rough?
I don't know. Each barangay is different, so
Okay.
I don't have that information.
So what is that money for? For that barangay?
Again, it depends on what they allocate it for.
So
If
depende
it's-
na sa barangay
yeah.
captain o sa
Well,
konseho.
if they have a free-to-use budget, they can use it for whatever they need. But
Okay.
sometimes it's project-specific. So
Okay.
mag-agad ang barangay captain, kana mayor, wa mi tubig din
So
kinahanglan ng budget.
nagyud ay budget ang barangay.
Yeah, they have a budget,
Pero
but it's very small.
what you're contending is kuwang na ilang budget.
Kuwang ang budget nga no pinakadako nga budget naa sa central. We at that time it was, I think we pay out of what we pay national government, only 15% comes back.
Okay.
15%
15%
comes back. Where's the 85%?
from the
From the
national?
taxes that we send to the national government,
Okay.
we only get 15%.
Okay. In case you're wondering what is happening here, it's Mimo Osmeña live on 105.1 TMC. Of course, he's part of the PROMDI party list. Nagsuroy-suroy ni siya sa tibuok Pilipinas. Nangampanya sa for the elections this May 12. How do you feel about the looming elections May 12? How do you feel about it? Kaning congressman, sabi tanaw ni mo niya, will this be a peaceful elections? Will this be will the people agree with the results and all of that stuff? Importante makaisanan nga ang mga kinabag-an mo agree sa resulta sa election. Tanaw ni mo aning, how do you feel about it? Just a
Yeah.
gut feeling.
It will be fine. I mean, majority will be okay. There's always an exception. Nagyo yung mga lugar nga pwedeng inita sa away. Pero majority will be fine with it. Where Filipinos are very relaxed.
Okay.
Madawat naman sila.
Kunya kaninga makadungog kog daghan kayo mga hungong-hihong, mga istorya, mga chismis diya sa mga marites og sa mga atong mga commentator kanang kunong party list kuno ba? Kanang word nga party list nganong naapa man na diha?
Yeah.
Nganong naapa man na diha? Unsa may imo ikasulti ana sa mga tumang kaigsuonan nga paminaw nila wa na gamit ang
Yeah.
party list.
Sakto na sila, no? Kay ang tuyo sa party list wa na matuman, nausab na. Ang nahitabo na daghang kayong party list ni gamit lang sila sa party list aron maka-appeal sila sa kongreso, pero ang kanang way klaro nga or dunay plataforma pero dili nila sundon, no?
Okay.
The difference is PROMDI was a national party with a very clear platform.
Okay.
And so our party list is our platform is in line with the national platform.
Okay.
So there are party lists there where you have certain names. I guess I don't want to talk about negative. My dad always said focus on the positive.
Okay.
But they're not doing what they're supposed to do, and that's why people are upset. Because anybody can establish a party list, and they're supposed to represent certain sectors.
Okay.
Whereas
how do you control? How do you weed out the those that are just there just to get a seat in Congress and those that are serious about it?
Well, that's the job of COMELEC, and they tried to do that. They cut down the number of party lists.
Okay.
In fact, they didn't even want to qualify us, and
Okay.
they asked like, "Who's your first nominee?" And because thinking that we would have certain people that we put in the party list, and I said, "I'm the first nominee." He says, "You yourself?" I said, "Yes, you're the chairman of the party. You're running as first nominee." Yes. Oh, this is not nuisance. This is serious.
Okay.
So that's how we got in.
Okay. So they're trying to weed out.
Well, I'll give you an example. I won't use the specific name, but
Okay.
let's say dunay party list nga carpenter.
Okay.
They will represent all the carpenters in the Philippines.
Okay.
Kanya ang ilang mga nominee, medical doctor, nga dili carpenter
Ang
or
qualification sa
abogado.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
lain na. So unsa may plano nila, mutabang sila sa they're supposed to be representing the sector of all the carpenters nga dili di ay sila carpentero.
Allowed din sila na that's allowed. I mean, like
Yeah, there's no rule on that. And how
Kung-
you can't change that rule because the congressmen vote for their own job. It's like ikay HR, ikay mo decide unsay rules sa HR.
Aren't you, for example, ba, you ran for PROMDI. So imong advocacy, ang imong mga plataforma is this, right?
Yeah.
Kung mulihas ka sa imong plataforma, kung imong buhaton, let's say maghimo kag balaod, nga way labot sa imong imong party list, pwede nang inana gihapon.
Yes.
So you're just like a regular congressman, di ay?
Yeah, that's right. When inikalingkod nimo sa Congress, kongresista ka.
Okay.
Ang kalahili lang, I mean, doon na may mga distrito nga ang mga congressman makakuha 100,000 votes.
Okay.
Party list can get millions of votes.
Correct, yeah. So mo lagi, so kung imong buhaton dili ang imong plataporma nga imong gisudlan in the first place, pwede ra gyud na siya. So
Pwede gihapon.
so walay balaod din nag-ingon nga kung imong buhaton lahi dili.
No, ang balaod nga makalingkod ka sa Kongreso, congressman ka.
Mora na siya.
Mora na siya.
And
Now, of course, mo nang daghan na suko sa party list.
Okay.
Kay wa nila gipatuman ang ilang plataporma. So they're saying, useless na, gigamit na nila. And that's what they're worried about, that there were a lot of party lists that were moving outside. But the same thing holds with our national parties.
Okay.
You know, our national parties don't have a clear platform. That's why candidates jump from one party to the other,
Correct,
to the
yeah.
other, to the
Correct.
other. Now, technically, you can disqualify, you can pull out a nominee, what's it? You issue the certificate of nomination. You can pull that if they don't follow your platform. You kick them out of the party. You know, then they join another party. So parties become a matter of convenience. Well, mainly it's they look for kinsay dunay budget. That's where they go in. So it doesn't follow like what other countries do, that they're very focused on their platform.
You know what? Running for office is such a kind of tough job, right?
That's why they asked me, well, you know, how do you view this election? How view your chances? How do you feel about winning or losing?
Yeah.
I said, I'm just gonna try, because I want the future of my children and my grandchildren. I said, if I lose, fine with me.
Yeah.
No skin of my back. Ang gahom na as mga tao, di sila ganahan. Wa, may kaso.
But I think you have a very worthy goal, a worthy cause of devolving.
But maybe
progress.
it's important to show by example.
Yeah.
And you know, like our style of campaigning at first, and even my social media, many others started copying.
Like what, for example?
Like the style. I started showing our actual campaign, you know, every day, everywhere we go, house to house.
Okay.
So they started doing that. Then I physically go there. I don't send just leaders. I physically go there. So now they're going to start copying. You know? That's good. That means that, because I don't care. If they benefit from it, good. It means they're doing real service. And that's my intention, is real service. So if I show the lead and they copy it and they do it, they become more popular, more power to them, as long as it gets the results that I want as well, which it benefits the people.
You know what, nakoy nabantayan ba sa probinsya, especially sa probinsya namo, naghinahinay, nag-develop dito. Nanay mga butang dito nga wala dito atong una, nanay mga gaysano, mga mall to ano dito naabot na
Because critical mass was reached.
naabot na sa Karkarang Uban, abot na sa kang layo na mga Prince Warehouse dito sa Medellin, sa Bugo, lagyo na kaysa nan sila ba. So this thing that we are talking about here, you can already hear it in the air, right? Nagsugod-sugod na ni ang devolution.
Hinay lang.
Diba?
It took how many years since the time Dad was in office,
Yeah.
1988 to 92. What are we now? 2025. That's what, almost 40 years. Why it takes so long? It should have been, you know, first 10 years, Cebu would have been, why are we not like South Korea? You know, we could have been, why are the other countries overtaking us?
So part of that is the devolution of progress.
Well, that is our opinion. That's
Okay.
an opinion.
Okay.
Okay. It's based on research. It's based on examples I've seen. That's my opinion. Now, it doesn't mean I'm right.
Okay.
But based on my knowledge, my background, and my experience, that should move us in the right direction.
Nahisgot man ta kaganiha ba nga during the beginning of our conversation here, Congressman, nga kadaghanan sa ato mga kaigsuunan nagplano nga manglarga sa gawas, di ba? That's also a kind of devolution, di ba?
Yeah, well, true.
True nga mugawas sila pero dili sa Pilipinas, ato sila sa lain nga lugar nga naay more opportunities. With your project, with your goal to bring progress to the provinces, to devolve economic progress, Do you think there'll be less and less people who want to devolve outside of the country?
Yes, 100%. Okay, the only reason, people become OFWs, kay kinsa may magpakaon sa ilang pamilya.
Mm.
It's a desperate situation, Way trabaho, minimum wage kuwang sa among pamilya. So nakakita kog trabaho sa gawas, mas dako ang kita. Moantos na lang ko, di ko mo gasto, tigwamo na ko ang akong sweldo. Padana ko, many of them are hoping makamigrate sila. But then when they all realize, they all miss home. I mean, I experienced that. Kaya pag human ako high school, gipada ko sa gawas, eskwela ko sa gawas,
Okay.
nagsugod na sa kong trabaho dito, part-time lang god sa KFC. Loto sa god dito sa Luyo.
Wow, okay.
I was a driver.
Gikuha ni mo ang recipe sa kuan sa KFC?
Secret.
Mo ring lamig kina imo ang mimos diha. Inani kay secret recipe sa KFC.
Ang KFC is pre-mix naman na.
Okay.
Pero karon sa internet, mahibaan naman na naman tanan.
Okay. So
But mingaw.
okay.
Lahi gyud ang kultura nila lahi. Yung sila nga dito na ko sa gawas ni balik pa man ko. Di ko ganahan silang kultura, di ko ganahan sa klima. Ingon sila karon sobra ka init ini. Magpabuwad ko sa init, di ko ganahan sa snow.
Okay.
Kaya ini katugnaw di waagi kay
So
kadaganan.
so tanaw nimo kaning atong mga kaigsuonan karon or maybe the future generations of professionals will want to stay here because there'll be more opportunities for them.
Is if ug dunay higayon, di gyud na sila molarga. No, labi na karon kadungog ka sa news na unsay nahitabo dito sa Canada ang mga Pilipino gipangligsan
Itong lapu-lapu.
dito sa
festival
US
nila.
daghan kayong mga you hear stories like
Yeah,
that. You're a
yeah.
second class citizen, di
Yeah,
man
yeah.
ka taga dito.
Okay.
Mo na importante kay nato nga lumad. Ako lumad Cebu. Nya kanang uban wadto ka dito langyaw ka, you're an alien.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Earthling pero alien.
So but like kaning ato ang mga kaigsuonan gyud daghan dugay na makita nga we're like a migrant nation, di ba? Kadaghanan sa to mga
Katunga sa akong mga classmate na nas gawas.
Same here. In fact, most of my family members are already abroad. Not immediate family katong akong mga titog, mga tita. A majority of them are there. So kaning this is more na siya og mahimong mahog na siya og normalize na siya ba?
Yeah, but karon ganahan silang mabalik. Retired naman. Ganahan na sila mo balik.
Correct.
Kaya wa gihapon sila maoyon sa sistema dito, sa kultura dito. Mingaw gihapon.
Mingaw gyapon. Tinod gyud na. Mamalik gyud na sila gyud hinoon diri. At least kaning
So, what does that mean?
Once a year.
Higayon.
Okay.
Nangita sila higayon.
In terms of kaning mga future or current politicians ba, do you think this has advantages or disadvantages? What are the pros and cons? Kung magtanaw sila sa imong what you're trying to do ba, how will they feel about it? Do you think this?
There are quite a few that agree with it.
Okay.
That have, like I said, like minds. No?
Okay.
They think the same way, but they're very progressive.
Okay.
So there's a mix. It's now just a question of the politics
Okay.
involved. As far as once you're in Congress, you're not the only one. There's 300 plus congressmen
Correct.
in
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
and many of them think the same way. Then you work together.
Okay.
And as far as the law is concerned, preparing what needs to be done, that's one part. Then you have to deal with the negotiations and the
Okay.
politics
Okay.
in getting certain legislation done. There will be some who will oppose. There will be some that will be in favor. It's a matter of convincing them and showing them, and maybe showing by example. And then by your example, people will copy. And do the same thing. And then you see everybody or more people will benefit from the same programs. I might see something that, hey, that's a good idea. Maybe I should, join that as well.
Tanaw na ko nimo Congressman Mimo Osmeña. First of all, that's a nice ring to it. And number two, I think you're more than competent to be able to convince other congressmen in your office, in your building. What do you call that? Batasang Pambansa, right? That you can convince them to see your vision, your goal. Akong pangutana siguro na, do you feel the same? Do you feel like kaya ra nimo? That's why you ran, right?
Well, the way I look at it is, I wouldn't do it if I didn't think I could do it.
Correct. Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
So
yeah.
I'm doing it because I'm going to try.
Okay.
I'm going to do the best to the best of my ability.
Okay. So, pipila na lang kaadlaw na hibilin eleksyon na gyud, di ba? Karon sa kutob ang kampanya
Campaign's only up to the 10th.
10th of May.
Yeah, then 12 ang election.
If they want to be able to shake your hand, if they want to support the PROMDI party
So
list.
the most important is the number because in the ballot, usara man ang party list. Di
Okay.
makakapilig duha.
Pila man kabuk party list di ay?
156
Uy,
party lists.
daghan na agwa na nagod.
And there are 63 seats.
Okay. So katungaan na mawag mataktak, di ba?
Yeah.
So pila kabuk 100.
156.
Oh, so
So
sobra-
nana sluyo niyan.
Sobro days katunga di ay.
Dili na siya alphabetical number na. So they had a well, it was computerized random selection of numbers.
Okay,
Ang
okay.
among number was 73.
73.
Yeah.
So 73 ang sa balota.
Oh, 73 PROMDI na
Okay.
na siya. So,
So usara kabuk usara kabuk party list ang imong mabotaran, di ba?
ah, usara gyud.
Per voter, di ba?
Sa og duha gani disqualified ng imong vote.
Both.
If you put two, nullified ang imong
Lagi,
ballot.
both or the entire ballot is
The
nullified.
entire party list side is nullified.
Nullified.
Yeah.
So asa man kapadong ron congressman, like are you still going to be going around the Philippines or mo istar na kadiri sa imong home base?
Right now, it's focused more Metro Cebu.
Okay.
So I'll be going around Metro Cebu.
Okay.
Metro Cebu means like Lapu-Lapu.
The entire island of
yeah.
Cebu.
Well, Metro Cebu, Metro inside, no? Yesterday I was in Hinatilan,
Inatilan, okay.
all the way south. Then I
Okay.
dropped by Barili,
Okay.
met with members of the organization. I'm
Okay.
not after every single vote. No?
Okay.
Ginagmay lang, but people who believe in the PROMDI platform.
So out of the millions and millions of voters in the Philippines, pila ra may kinahanglan nga masud ta?
Okay, if the technical is if you get 2%, you're guaranteed one seat,
Okay.
and to get another seat, you need 4%, and if you get the third seat, you get 6%. So you
Okay.
can get up to 3 seats.
Okay.
But if you look at the math, there are 63 congressional seats available. If you say 2% each, sobra 120, 63, 126,
Mm.
126%. Sobra na siya.
Okay.
So actually, you don't have to reach the 2%. So ang mahitabuan na is ilang inig-abot na sa last nga 2%, bahin-bahinon na to sa next in line.
Mm.
So last election, I think it was 250,000 votes got you one seat.
So if you get this time around, if you get somewhere within that vicinity of 250,000,
300,000, yeah. You get one
we
seat.
will be able to get a seat, right?
Yeah.
Na uban diha nga murag sobra sa usa ilahang mga
Well, some will get 8%.
okay.
And if they get 8%, they only get 3 seats, even though it's more than 6.
Mo
All
na-
they need
mo-
is 6.
mo na yung maximum.
Maximum is 3 seats.
3
Makakuha sila 10%. Mo na gyapon 3 seats
so
na gyapon.
in the event nga, for example, ang PROMDI makakuha og let's just say more than its required number of votes to get one seat, mas naay for second seat. Do you have a second
Yeah, well,
representative?
what Comelec did was before there were only 5 nominees, then you can change the nominees.
Okay.
And up to 3 can sit, and the 2 are reserved.
Okay.
Now it's 10 nominees, and you cannot change ever, so
Okay.
that people don't sell their party lists.
Oh, okay.
And naman ilang ibaligya. So you come up with 10 names, then the party decides who sits down.
Okay.
So you just submit 1 to 10, and normally number 1 sits, then number 2, and then number 3. But you can change it. You can say number 1, number 10, number 9. It's up to you.
But kana siya mo sit na siya for the entire
3 years.
10 year of the
Three, yeah.
of the
Well,
Congress.
no, you can resign in the middle, and then one of their other party mates will take over.
Puri ra magpuli-puli.
Even kanang regular district congressman, kay doon nami usa ka district congressman sa among partido ni Dagan dito sa Iloilo niya, ni-resign siya,
Okay.
gipulihan namo siyang igsoon,
Okay.
or councilor rather.
If they want to know more about the PROMDI devolution movement on the social media platforms, are you active there? Congressman, onya ganahan sila makikistorya nimo na sila yung mga kaligut-gut kanang mga pangutana, asa man sila pangitaon, asa
Well,
man kanila pangitaon. Go ahead.
The kanang pangutana lamdag man na.
Okay, okay.
We have that social media site Lamdag.
Okay.
Of course, now it's put on hold until after May 12
Okay.
because of the Comelec ban. Then
Okay.
after May 12, ipadayon na nako. So mobalik ko sa akong programa.
Okay.
So that will continue. Hopefully, even if I'm in Congress, I will still do once a week
Okay.
lamdag.
Pero naas lang mga pangutana karon o ganahan sila mo suporta kanimo unsa may ilang buhaton?
We have there's one social media site that's Mimo Osmeña Proud PROMDI.
Okay.
But it's kind of hard to answer because I have 110,000 followers.
Okay.
So,
But
perting daganag message. And
okay.
then,
But you're gonna try anyway, right?
yeah, we'll try.
Okay.
My personal Facebook, I don't, wag yung ko'y politika gibutang niya.
Okay.
Nothing. You know,
So you go to Mimo Osmeña
Proud PROMDI.
PROMDI.
Yeah.
That's MIMO Osmeña Proud PROMDI. That's his official Facebook page.
There's also a
for-
PROMDI site. Both are Comelec registered sites.
Okay, so they can talk to you there.
They can leave messages there, and
Okay.
then I'll have somebody.
Your social media manager.
Yeah.
Okay, finally, before I let you go, because I know you're still very busy, unsa man imuhang pitch sa ato mga kaigsunon, daghan kayo, you mentioned 150 plus party
Party
list kaning parties. Unsa man imong pitch ngano man nga ang PROMDI man ilang i-check numero 73 sa balota, nganong 73 man alang i-check sa ilang mga balota karong Mayo 12. Go ahead.
Ang PROMDI dili bago. Nawa rin ni siya kay giprotesta dito nga ngano nga naka-appeal man ang party list sa National Party. And the Supreme Court came out with a decision in 2013 nga pwede kaayo. And it's only now na nakabalik. Actually, last election maunta to, pero namatay si daddy o si mami, nagdungan sila, so na-busy ko. So
Okay.
it's only now nga nakabalik mi. So, ang makita sa mga tao ang gibuhat sa PROMDI, ang plataforma klaro gihapon.
Okay.
Sundon gihapon na namo. No?
Okay.
Kanya, doon ay ang nabuhat sa PROMDI sa katong panahon ang mga barangay beneficiary gyud kay ang budgets diretso nila. So, it's a proven track record, and it's a matter of just continuing it and being diligent about it para ni sa kalambuan sa probinsya.
So muna imong pitch sa kanila, ato mga botanteng future voters out there this May 12, right? Vote PROMDI number 73 sa inyong mga balota. Kaning ato ang ipatukar karon ba mga voice clips ni siya sa kinsa man sila mga voice clips kaning congressman, and why did you craft it like this kaning mga voice clips ato ipatukar karon taon?
Well, we were going around talking to people, and many of them still remember PROMDI from the time my dad, and many of them are proud to be PROMDI.
Okay.
So, musuporta gyud sila. So, mga proud PROMDI. So, bisag kami, like Dad always said, Cebu, the boom of Cebu was not because of him. It was because of the people of Cebu. So, that's why ang akong mga commercials nga among gihimo, ang mga tao mismo, sila mismo, that we are proud of them. So, they are proud PROMDIs.
Ibaw kan ang uban at kung atong magsuunan ba naglibog ni sila aning PROMDI kay namo gyud PROMDI nga kaning TV series ba unya kaning kasi may nag-una ni si PROMDI nga si Lito Osmeña og si Mimo Osmeña or PROMDI kanang TV series kasi nag-una ni
1998.
1998 ang
97 ang establishment sa PROMDI.
PROMDI. So nag-una gid mo ani di ay.
Nag-una
So
gid.
original gid mo nga PROMDI. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, future Congressman Mimo Osmeña, daghang salamat Mimo, and good luck. You will always have our full support here in 105.1 TMC. Ang atong mga kaigsuonan diri sa syudad sa Sugbo, sa atong mga silingan sa lain-laing mga munisipyo ug syudad sa Cebu ug atong mga lain-laing islas or Ormoc, sa Bohol, sa Negros, and so on and so forth nga makadungog ni ani ayamog kalimot mga kagalaan sa inyong balota number 73. That's 73 sa inyong mga balota PROMDI. Paminaw ra gud ni.
Ako si
Party list number 73.
Ko si Eduardo Milgar, usa ka bodeguero, Lumulopyo, Talisay, City, Cebu. Proud PROMDI.
Ayaw Kalimti sa Mayo 12. PROMDI Party List number 73.
Ako si Erlinda Jaime, usa ko ka vendor, lumulopyo sa Barriolo, Cebu City. Proud PROMDI.
Ayaw Kalimti sa Mayo 12. PROMDI Party List number 73.
Local. Local. And ready to go global. 105.1 TMC.